Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the ISO, I'd like to welcome you to today's Penalty Enhancements, Demand Response, Investigation, and Tolling stakeholder call to discuss the draft final proposal. My name is Christina Guimera, representing ISO Stakeholder Affairs, and I will be facilitating today's meeting. Today's slide deck presentation is also available on the initiative webpage, and you can get to that page by going to kaiso.com, and then under the Stakeholder Center tab on the homepage, you'll see Policy Initiatives. If you click that link, it'll take you to our main initiative landing page where you can search for the initiative webpage. Next slide, please. This meeting is being recorded and the video file will be posted to the initiative webpage for information and convenience purposes only. The recordings and any related transcriptions should not be reprinted without the ISO's permission. And if you need any technical assistance at any point during the meeting, please send chat to the event producer. Next slide, please. To ask questions, you can open the participant and chat panels on the bottom right, and you can raise your hand by selecting the raise hand icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen, or if you joined audio only, press *3 on your device. And for everyone joining us today, please state your name and affiliation first before speaking. And you may also send comments and questions via the chat to me or to all panelists. Next slide, please. Today, Dinesh will be giving us a background on PEDRIT before discussing the draft final proposal and leaving some time for questions. Afterwards, we'll have an open discussion on the revised straw proposal and initiative. And after that, I will wrap things up with next steps and some announcements. Next slide, please. And for the stakeholder process, we're currently in the proposal development stage. And right after the draft final proposal was posted on July 18th. So next I'll turn it over to Dinesh to discuss the PEDRIT draft final proposal. And next slide, please.
Great, thank you so much, Christina. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dinesh, and I'm the policy lead for this initiative. Next slide, please. PEDRIT seeks to address deferred topics from the Rules of Conduct Enhancements Initiative. Most proposed changes affect the Rules of Conduct, Section 37 of the tariff, with a new topic affecting Section 22, Miscellaneous. The purpose of the Rules of Conduct is to provide fair notice and an equal environment for market participants, redress market manipulation and anti-competitive behavior, and foster general confidence in markets. As policy lead for PEDRIT, I strive to be as transparent, respectful, and responsive to feedback as possible. I hope and expect that you all will do the same as we work together to improve our shared market. Next slide, please. The following is a summary of the scope of PEDRIT and Rules of Conduct enhancements. The ISO is proposing a new topic to remove the ISO's reporting requirement to the Secretary of Energy or a relevant other secretary for federal entity rules of conduct violations. We will discuss later in further detail. Next slide, please. Staff plans to present PEDRIT to the joint ISO board and newly named Western Energy Markets governing body in September. The draft final proposal is the last iteration with comments prior to the joint decision. The ISO may release a final proposal prior to the joint board governing body, incorporating feedback on the draft final proposal, especially if there are comments on the new topic or small non-core edits that are needed. Given that the Rules of Conduct applies to all market participants, PEDRIT is classified under joint authority. The full tentative timeline, including future draft tariff meetings and dates, is located in the draft final proposal. Next slide, please. So moving on to the topics. Currently, missing or late DR monitoring data is not penalized due to disproportionate penalty design and undefined submission timeline. Next slide, please. The revised straw proposal recommends T+52B as the new submission deadline with a flat $1,000 penalty for late data and additional flat $3,000 for missing data past T+214B. The penalty would be applied per SCID and be the same, missing one or multiple monitoring data files. Additionally, penalties would apply for not submitting the minimum 45 days of historical data. Note that 45 days is minimum, with additional data required if detailed per specific baseline methodology. Currently, this additional data is required only for the weather matching baseline methodology. These elements are the same as in the revised straw proposal. In response to stakeholder requests, the ISO proposes a pre-deadline courtesy notice for missing DR monitoring data. Upon PEDRIT implementation, the ISO would send email courtesy notices at T+44B. This structure is similar to the missing meter data pre-deadline courtesy notice structure. The ISO plans to automate both notices by 2026. The current automation vision are dashboards in MRIS, which will show any resource ID with meter data or monitoring data outstanding near the T+52 deadline. Note that penalties only apply after the T+52 deadline. This is a courtesy to provide a heads up for any data that is outstanding approaching that deadline. These dashboards will replace courtesy notice emails once live. Another note, all elements of this section are courtesies, and market participants remain responsible for data submission compliance, irrespective of whether or not a courtesy notice has been received. Next slide, please. Currently, the Rules of Conduct investigative process includes 3 letters: notice, findings, and penalty description. At each step, there's a 30-day period for stakeholder input or appeal. PEDRIT proposes a 2-letter process with a notice of findings, including the description of the penalty. The 3-letter process was originally designed for complex penalty investigations with undefined penalty amounts. Today, the ISO issues traffic ticket-like penalties with all subjectivity under FERC jurisdiction. According to the tariff, the ISO must provide investigated market participants an opportunity, quote, to present any issues of fact or other information relevant to the potential rules of conduct violation, end quote. And the ISO must, quote, consider all such information or data presented, end quote. If the ISO needs to ask the market participant follow-up questions about the presented information, the ISO does so before communicating the results of the investigation. Any additional basis for appeal falls under FERC jurisdiction. In response to stakeholder requests for enhanced communication, the ISO proposes providing additional clarity and support on what contestations could lead to no penalty during the ISO investigation. The ISO envisions additional training, examples, and/or template guides to support market participants in deciding whether their contestation falls under the ISO purview, issues of fact, or FERC purview, all other issues. By providing additional communication, the ISO believes fewer higher relevance contestations would be submitted, reducing administrative burden for both market participants and the ISO. In response to stakeholder feedback suggesting the ISO consider having 1 city ticket per issue or potential violation, the ISO proposes opening a city ticket when a rules of conduct investigation is started. This city ticket will host all investigation letters and can be used to provide responses, including for the penalty tolling process. The city ticket will stay open until either the investigation closes or a settlement invoice is issued after the FERC penalty tolling period. Next slide, please. So this topic has no changes from the revised straw proposal. The current FERC penalty tolling process requires upfront payment. If a stakeholder appeals the penalty to FERC and informs the ISO by the dispute deadline, the ISO then returns the money pending FERC decision. The draft final proposal recommends getting rid of this upfront payment. Instead, the entity has 30 days to provide the ISO with evidence of a FERC appeal. If no appeal, the ISO then collects the penalty amount. Note, the scheduling coordinator or market participant may still appeal to FERC after the 30 calendar days, with the penalty refunded if the appeal is successful at FERC. Next slide, please. Stakeholders expressed strong support for a minimum materiality threshold or first infraction waiver for inaccurate meter data penalties. In response, the proposal recommends inaccuracies under 3% or under 3 megawatt hours of a day's actual meter data no longer be considered a tariff violation. Inaccuracies below the threshold would not trigger a rules of conduct investigation, nor would it trigger a penalty. Market adjustments would continue to apply. Failure to exercise due diligence in submitting accurate settlement quality meter data may separately violate FERC market behavior rules. This proposal section remains consistent with what was seen in the revised straw proposal. In response to stakeholder requests, examples and additional clarifications have been included in the draft final proposal on how exactly the threshold applies. We are happy to answer additional questions both on this call or via outreach after this call. Next slide, please. Final topic. So this topic is new, and the draft final proposal introduces a new proposal to remove the ISO's reporting requirement for federal entity rules of conduct violations. Due to limitations in statutory authority, the ISO cannot impose rules of conduct sanctions on federal entities. If a rules of conduct violation does occur, Section 22.9b of the tariff requires the ISO to submit a report to the Secretary of Energy or respective secretary outlining the incident. Federal entities already received notice in the rules of conduct investigator process, including letters outlining investigations and subsequent findings. Sending an additional report to the Secretary of Energy may be redundant and is an administrative burden for the ISO and the Department of Energy office. Therefore, the ISO proposes eliminating this section from the tariff. Okay, next slide, please. Any questions on what we've covered today? Feel free at this time to raise your hand.
There are currently no questions in the queue. And just a reminder to everyone, if you're having trouble with the raise hand feature, you can always shoot us a question through the chat. And I see now that we have a question from Rhett. Rhett, you're now unmuted.
I have a couple of questions. If we go back to slide 13 for a minute. So could you talk about this, how it lines up with the flow chart that you haven't gone over yet, but it's in the proposal regarding the 30 days. The slide here seems to differ from what that flow chart says in terms of how long the process goes before the referral happens.
Great question, Rhett. So actually, if you don't mind, Christina, we'll take it to the end of the deck. That shows the relevant flow chart that Rhett is referring to. So this would be slide 32.
Yes, I think what I'm going to, I guess, point out is that that's slide 32 and slide 13 here are going to be different. In that slide 13 here says it's 30 days and then you refer. But the flow chart's going to say you have more than 30 days if there's a process going on back and forth. So I guess I just wanted clarification on which way you're going to go.
So both the flow chart and this slide are internally consistent with each other. The difference is that how it's outlined in terms of topics, that penalty tolling process is the separate process that comes after the investigation, right? So there is, the penalty tolling process applies if the ISO determines there is a penalty, right? Otherwise, there's nothing to toll, right? So there is a prior process that is described in the flow chart that happens before any consideration of penalty tolling could occur. So the flow chart gives you that whole breadth of both the both starting from when a potential violation is identified, going all the way through any FERC appeals that may occur. And this slide refers to one specific portion of that process.
So
did that help?
No, I don't think I'm still getting it, right? So if the scheduling coordinator market participant responds on day 30, according to slide 13, it's essentially, it's too late. You're going to refer that day, right? But this flow chart says that, you know, if they respond on day 30 or day 29, that there's still, you know, some time in there to try to work out and understand what the new facts might reveal, right? So you're not going to report it that day. You're going to go through the process internally. But the other slide says day 30, it's going, right? Day 30, it's going to FERC.
So let me actually, I'll point out exactly where I understand where your confusion is coming from, Rhett, and I appreciate your concern here. So when the slide 13 specifically refers to in this flow chart, slide 13 specifically refers to the small dark blue box that says 30-day appeal period with tolling, right? That is that little thing on the right-hand side, right? The dark blue box there, right? So that's that specific piece, right? And so that specific piece occurs after the process that you had mentioned, which we will be keeping, which is that process where entities have the ability to provide information regarding the investigation before any determination occurs from the ISO, right? So all of this penalty tolling stuff is assuming that there's already a penalty in place, right? And that's determined after any discussions between the ISO and the participants regarding whether or not there should be a penalty. Does that make sense?
Yes, I get it. Thank you. That clarifies it. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you for your question, Red.
Sure. Can I ask another one? Or I can go back to the queue.
Or actually, let's see. Is there anyone else in the queue yet?
No other questions in the queue right now.
All right, Red. All yours.
Okay, thanks. Can we talk about how you intend to use City for the recording and tracking? I think our concern is around, we want to make sure that the information gets to the right entity, and the right entity for us as a scheduling coordinator is not us, right? It's going to be the market participant, generator owner, PGA holder. So the current method is email, which we know can be improved, but in that email, it's addressed to the appropriate entity. It's addressed to the market participant. City, however, market participants don't have access to. But I do know that City has the ability to make sure that information gets emailed out to the right people. So I think there might be some interest. We might have some interest in the details of how you implement that. If it's implemented one way, I think we could support it. If it's implemented another way, I think we would have trouble supporting it. So could we talk about some of those details?
Totally appreciate that there. Angelica, do you have a moment to jump into a few of these details?
Sure.
Okay,
so
great.
Our vision is that we would, as stated before, create that single City ticket and put the emails into that City ticket and allow folks to respond there. But the emails are going to continue to go to the same market participants, the SC and the generator owner when applicable, as they do today. So your market participants, your generator owners will continue to get the email notification. This hasn't been finalized yet, but in talking with customer services, their plan is to have the scheduling coordinator continue to be the folks who have access to the city ticket and be able to respond within the city ticket. So that would mean the market participant would get the email, and then they could respond to the email to the scheduling coordinator with their response. And then you as a scheduling coordinator could update that city case.
Okay, thank you. I understand where you're going. And yeah, keeping the generator owner in that process all the way through is helpful to us. So you can see the scheduling coordinator being required to cut and paste and keeping up with the life of the city ticket. But in terms of the meat and potatoes of the responses, those will still be going directly to market participants.
Yeah, we're not going to change that. That continues to be copied to the market participants when applicable, because it's only applicable for rules of conduct categories where somebody other than the SC is the responsible party. So like telemetry noncompliance, for example. Note that we're not proposing to make any changes to who gets contacted.
Okay, and as the city process, through the life of the city process, as you put in comments and get responses back and forth, the city application will also send out the emails to the scheduling coordinator, and as well as the additional folks listed in the ticket. But I get that you're not changing the process, the initial notification, right? The notice of review. I get they're going to keep those emails the same. Now that information that comes back is going to have to be put into the city ticket. So there could be some back and forth that's generated from entries into the city system. The city system can also send emails, right? And it goes out to everybody. And I guess I just want to make sure that process through the life of the ticket also goes to all of the individuals involved, scheduling coordinator, which it will, and more importantly, and the market participant generator.
Well, okay, so if you're talking about, for example, today on a city case, when an SC makes a case comment, or when the ISO makes a case comment to the scheduling coordinator gets the comment. If you're talking about adding the market participant to that case comment, that's not currently in scope. So all every single action or interaction in the city case going to both the SC and to the generator owner, that's not in scope of what we're proposing.
How do we talk about that? Isn't there a spot in city where you can put a bunch of carbon copies, and that every transaction in the city case goes to not only SC but also everyone in the CC section? Yeah,
there's an email recipients field. My understanding is the email recipients, the email addresses in that field only get status changes. So they don't get copied on every case comment that happens.
Okay. Okay, I think
so it would continue to function.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it would continue to function that same way.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I think I know where you're going. I think the difficulty we might have is that it's essentially going to be shifting the burden out to the SC to be, I guess, more of a middleman and just relaying information back and forth and putting it in and out of city throughout its life. So I understand where you're going. So you can make comments based upon that. It just feels like I agree that I can see the intent of trying to reduce administrative burden, but I think we'd want to reduce the administrative burden for all the participants in the market. So feels like as it stands now, it's simply shifting the burden to the SC. So, but we'll consider it.
So,
Thank you.
okay, so my understanding is now the market participants don't have access to city. They don't now, and they aren't proposing to in the future. And so now if a market participant has a response, then they send that response to the SC to create the city case. Is that not what's happening right now?
No, it's done primarily through email right now. And so they can just do a reply all, right, and get their message to you directly. It's not, these aren't handled in city right now.
I don't monitor a mailbox right now, but all the letters say to open up the city case for responses.
Okay. Yeah, let me take a look at that. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, because we're not trying to you know, reduce the administrative burden by making it harder on you guys. We're not proposing to make any of those changes or any changes that would do that. So my understanding is this would just be an improvement because everything could be contained within the one city case, but that the SC would still have to, assuming that you're not also the generator owner, you wouldn't, the generator owner would still not have access to city, and the SC would still be opening up that city case on their behalf. So yeah, maybe we can circle back, make sure that's everybody's understanding.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate you as well, Rhett. Thanks for your comments here, and thanks to SE for their comments as well. This is something that we're. We'll go for it.
This has to do with the new one that just popped up about federal entities. Mm-hmm. So we are the scheduling coordinator for a federal entity, and I'm just trying to understand the impact of this change you're suggesting here.
From my understanding, there will be no impact to you as an SC for that federal entity. This is a separate process that happens after everything is done, where the ISO prepares a letter to send to the Department of the Secretary of Energy. So that correspondence goes direct. It doesn't go through the SC. So this change should not have any impacts on the SC.
So if the federal entity misbehaves, will we or will we not get a notice of review and start the city ticket process?
Sorry, Rhett. I think I just missed that. It was a little faint. Could you repeat it one more time?
Yeah, if the federal entity misbehaves does something that a normal entity does, that would start off the results notice of review. Do they still? Does the federal entity still get that notice of review? And is that process that we're talking about still happen, or does it not happen?
That is correct. The process will still happen. Okay. So we will still be providing those notice of reviews. That is the conclusion of that investigation, and a notice that there was a violation of the tariff.
Okay, so you're just cutting out something on the back end that's notice to the DOE.
Yes, that's the current process.
Okay. If that's the current process, what are you moving to then?
Sorry, repeat that one more time.
I think your answer was, I described something, you said, yes, that's the current process. So then what are you moving to? What is the new process?
We're proposing removing that back, what you'd referred to as the back end process. So the idea would be the ISO would not be sending those letters to the Secretary of Energy anymore.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Red. Really appreciate it. And we'll make sure to circle back offline about the, just to make sure we're all squared away in terms of that city change as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
There are currently no further questions in the queue.
Okay. Let's move it out to close out the session then. Assuming that everyone's had their questions answered and are open to having that open discussion. So let's move it to next steps. Thank you.
Thanks, Anish. For next steps, the draft final proposal comments are due by the end of day, August 8th. And on September 26th will be the ISO Board of Governors and WEM governing body joint decision on PEDRIT. Next slide, please. For additional information, you can visit the initiative webpage, and you can always email us at isostakeholderaffairs@kiso.com with any questions. Next slide, please. Now for some ISO announcements. For insights into the ISO grid and market operations, be on the lookout for our Energy Matters blog, or you can always subscribe. Here you can see the latest posts regarding the Western Energy Imbalance Market governing body adopting a new name, and another one regarding the July 2024 heat wave. Next slide, please. Next, we'd like to announce the new policy initiatives timeline. The ISO has launched this timeline to give stakeholders an overview of ongoing policy initiatives, and it really offers details such as the initiative status, timeline, and the current phase of the stakeholder engagement process. And updates will be made weekly and can be found on the policy initiatives landing page. And as always, for more information, you can always email us. Next slide, please. Lastly, we'd like to remind you that registration is open for the 2024 Stakeholder Symposium, and you can visit the event website for additional information. And with that, we'd like to thank you for joining today's discussion. As a reminder, this meeting was recorded for information and convenience purposes only, and the video file will be posted on the initiative webpage. Thank you, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
The conference is now over. You may now disconnect. Have a wonderful, great rest of your day.